Hello and welcome back to the gutter, the Grindhouse gutter. I'm Josh, and as always, I'm joined here with Donnie,
Yo.
Tiana, and the Professor Smoke.
Hey.
What's up?
And we are from the All American Spookshow podcast, which you can listen to every Monday at 6 p.m. East, right here on the YouTube channel, but also wherever you get your podcast. And of course, we always want to encourage you to stick around here on the YouTube channel and check out our other series, including Video Vortex and Hammer Horror in Order. Also, click the bell to be notified and hit subscribe while you're here. We would sure appreciate that. But the whole point of Grindhouse Gutter is we let the Professor Smoke there choose what we're going to watch and every month. And the premise is it has to be something that would have played in the old drive-ins and the grindhouses of the 70s and 80s and I guess into the 90s, right? So what'd you bring us this month, Smoke?
This time we have, it goes by two main titles, right? Blood for Dracula or Andy Warhol's Dracula. Depending on, these days, though, on the Blu-ray, on the Criterion, and on the, I believe, Severin Films put out a version of it, generally goes by Blood for Dracula from 1974.
Now, what exactly, I mean, because I know this was directed and I believe written, right, by Paul Morrissey. Wasn't that right? Now, what is the connection to Andy Warhol?
Not very much, really. I don't even believe he was on the set. Most of this was, I believe, shot in Italy. Besides attaching his name to it and there being some players from the Andy Warhol's sort of a stable of actors, like, Joe Dallesandro, for instance, obviously from New York. If you didn't know that, you listen to him talk a little bit, and you can definitely tell. He's in this movie and the companion piece, which is Flesh for Frankenstein, or Andy Warhol's Frankenstein. So really, I think he's just lending his name to it, and he was there, I believe, in the I don't know if it was the pre-parties or the post-parties or whatever for the movie, but hands-on stuff, not a whole lot that he had to do with it.
And I guess you could see like there's a certain style to this that maybe they could attribute that, right? Like the colors and the way that the saturation and everything of it, and I guess some of the characters and stuff, kind of that weird 60s, 70s counterculture type stuff.
Yes, yeah. And but both movies also are very campy as well.
Like this is the first time I'd ever seen this movie, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But man, you could really chop this thing down. You could probably condense this down to like a 30-minute episode of something, and get the same and arrive to the same place.
Shot in Italy, and it just has a very European feel to it. So they a lot of times they took their time telling, letting the plot breathe, I guess you could say.
Yeah, this is it's a unique take on Dracula. I'll say that. This one is by the way, I need to have like a little button or an alarm or something that goes off whenever we have a movie that has something to do with daywalkers during the sucky summer, because like they kind of throw some of that your normal vampire conventions out the window with this, right?
Some of them, right, and others are still there. Like for instance, the garlic. You can't have garlic, right, or be around garlic or whatever. But the daylight thing. He just in this one and it happens in other vampire movies as well. He doesn't burst into flame or explode when he's in sunlight. It's just uncomfortable for him, right?
Yeah, which is totally different from other movies that you'll see where, like one we just watched over on the podcast, I don't want to give too much away, but one we just watched there where like towards the end is someone bursting into flame or just blowing up because sunlight, right? So like this is the opposite way. Also too, that when he blatantly just grabs the cross off the wall and kind of holds it like, yep, and then sits it down. So like clearly that doesn't bother him.
As we get into the sucky summer, I guess we'll come across, maybe that was something we should do as far as all the various, things across movies that the vampire lore or whatever, like whether it's a stake or whether it's not a stake that kills them, or whether it's sunlight, how much it harms them, or whether it doesn't harm them at all,
So far, I've been trying to point it out as we're going along here, like what are some of the things that they're doing and not doing here. And that this one is like crosses clearly doesn't bother him, and sunlight doesn't bother him too much.
Yeah, but it's not overly bothered by it, right? Just a little bit.
Overall, the point of this movie, though, is that like Count Dracula needs virgin blood.
Yeah, or in the pronunciation, in the Romanian pronunciation, virgin, right? Yeah, the WIRG.
He needs virgin blood, and any other blood makes him sick. So it's got to be pure. And I love the part, by the way, where he drinks the blood of a girl that he thinks is a virgin, and she's not a virgin. And he just turns green. Like,
Yeah, and by turning green, we mean like not that there's an effect that makes his skin turn green. You're supposed to get the idea that he's turning green, but by a primary green light being shown on his face.
yeah. So like, ultimately, I think this is probably the most, without giving too much away. We don't do spoilers here on Grindhouse Gutter or any of these YouTube series. This has got to be one of the most ineffectual Draculas in movie history. Like, he's not very Dracula.
Well, he's caught in the weak stage because there's a point. This movie's kind of like showing that first of all he's got to move from Romania to somewhere else because apparently there's no more virgins or they haven't found any more virgins in Romania. And if he doesn't have virgin blood, like we said, he retches and gets sick and everything. So it's got to be pure virgin blood, and that's why he goes to Italy to this count and countess's house or a castle or mansion, whatever, to because he's maybe there's more virgins in Italy than there is in Romania anymore. So that's just the running sort of gag, no pun intended, of the virgin blood or whatever, or like that one line where he says, "What was the blood of these whores is killing me," and it's Udo Kier, so he's got that accent.
Except for there is also too the weird accent of the guy that works there at the place, the servant, whatever he is. He sounds like he's from the Bronx.
He is. Well, I don't know if he's necessarily Bronx. He is from New York, and he's one I was talking about earlier. That was part of the Andy Warhol stable of people around Andy Warhol's orbit or whatever, who was an actor. That's Joe Dallesandro, and he's in Flesh for Frankenstein in the same sort of a role, sort of an assistant person like that, right? And he still, even though he kind of, I don't know that he's trying to mask his New York accent. Maybe he's trying to tame it in some way because at times it's thicker than at others, or in certain words it's thicker than on others. So it shines through it many times, and other times you kind of forget about it until he falls back into it again. So it's. Yeah, they are in Italy. I was watching them, kind of like it's Italian accent by way of Brooklyn or Bronx or.
And we can't let it completely go unless we mention that there's the full on cameo from Roman Polanski as the card shark.
Yes, yeah,
that was pretty good. Overall, it's a pretty good flick. I just think that like you could condense it way down and get to the point. Like there's a lot of drag there. Where there's not much going on, and it's a lot of like back and forth with trying to figure out which one of these 4 girls are virgins or not, and all this stuff. So there's a lot of that going on, and of course, it's not a proper Grindhouse flick without some sex, right? So you get a couple good sex scenes in there, so you get a little bit of all that stuff. So with that in mind, though, what we do here on Grindhouse Gutter is we let the professor give his Grindhouse Gutter rating, which is 0 through 10. Basically, the way we describe it is what makes it grindhousey, right? Like a 0 through 10 scale, 0 being the worst, 10 being the the craziest type of flick. And then we let him give his we don't call it star rating, we just call it it's just it's like a star rating, except we have a different measure for what type of genre movie it is. So for this one, it's a horror movie, so you'll be giving out cleavers, and that's a 0 through 5 scale, just like we do stars. So first, we'll let you go with your gutter rating.
Oh yeah, as we talked about, it's got a decent amount of gore in it, especially as you get a little bit towards the end. I mean, we're not going to give away spoilers here, so but closer you get towards the climax of the movie, you get it gets a little bit gorier, right? And then you get, like we're talking about, his retching is not a pretty sight, right? Usually, he drinks the blood of non-virgins, and then at first he's kind of like, oh, okay, because he doesn't know, like he's assuming they're virgins, he's drinking their blood, and then he's okay for a second or two, and then he starts to get the retches, and then it's just vomiting blood, and it's going down his as out his mouth and down his chest or whatever. And so I mean that's disgusting, I guess you could say, in a sense, and maybe not overly gory, right? But as you get to say towards the climax, and we're not going to give it away here, it gets gorier. There's some things involved like dismemberment and whatnot, right? So So it's got the gore element, I think, in there. Now the companion piece, Flesh for Frankenstein, I think is even gorier than this one overall. So I think I'll go with as far as the Grindhouse rating. Like I said, there's plenty of sex and nudity and that exploitation element. There's a lot of black humor. I mean, well, it's a straightforward. It's not a straightforward horror movie. It's got its horror elements. It's got its intentionally humorous elements, which, like I said, is it borders on, or not just borders on, but goes over the line of campiness, right? I think I'll give it an 8 on the Grindhouse rating because it's got all the earmarks there for a Grindhouse. It's just, it doesn't go overboard like some other movies that we've given a 10 to, such as Zombie or Cannibal Holocaust or City of the Living Dead or whatever. So yeah, I'll go with 8 on the Grindhouse rating.
And what about your final film rating? So this is how many cleavers you're going to give out.
I really enjoy. I know it does get slow and plotting in parts, I guess, but I don't know. Being used to this type of European film, whether it be, especially when it comes to giallo movies, when it comes to giallos, they definitely let them breathe, and some people will not be taken in by that because it'll be slow and plotting, and it just seems like the pacing is way off or whatever. The more of these I've watched, the less that's a problem to me. I mean, when I first started watching like a lot of European films and giallos and all that stuff, I was kind of that way because I first started with like Zombie and Cannibal Ferox and these types of, fast-paced, gory, just keeps it going pretty quickly because it's only about an hour and a half long or so. So when I first started watching giallos and getting more into that, it took me a little while before I got into that and just realizing that that's just the way these European movies develop. So, and this one basically is a European movie, even if it's, directed by Paul Morrissey and has Andy Warhol's name attached to it. It's very European in its plotting and actors and all that stuff. So that aspect doesn't bother me so much, even though I know I can get what you're saying as far as it being, slow going in parts, and where if it were trimmed down, it would be a faster pace and play out better maybe. But I think I still enjoyed it a lot. So I think I'm going to go with I'll go with a 4 on the Cleaver rating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a well done movie. It's just kind of a weird movie, and it's definitely one that needs to be seen, regardless of what we've said about it here today, good or bad. It needs to be seen. It's definitely worth one watch for sure because it's very unique and very kind of the time in a lot of ways too. So, and I love the like I said, we're not getting into it, but the ending that bumped it up. That bumped it up a lot for me.
There's without giving away what happens in the ending, this movie came out before Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You can definitely see a correlation between certain aspects in the climax of this film and the Black Knight scene from Monty Python.
Yes, there's that.
Yes.
Well, we'll leave it there for this month. So what are we going to be, before we wrap it up, what are we going to be watching next month as the Spookshow Sucky Summer continues, the vampire films all summer long?
Not only is it going to be, of course, a vampire movie because we're in Sucky Summer, but it's also going to be another movie from 1974 and another European film. But this time it's going to be Vampires from Jose Ramon Larraz, how do you pronounce his last name there, from Spain, I believe. So yeah, we'll hop from a movie made in Italy by partially American crew and European crew to a movie made in Spain in 1974. Same year, though, like I said, as this movie. So that'll be a fun one. I don't know if anybody's seen that one. I don't think Tiana hasn't seen it yet either. So I haven't seen it in a long, long time, since probably the video rental days, probably I would say like early to mid 90s maybe was the last time I saw it. And I remember it being pretty decent quotient of, let's just say that the Grindhouse rating should be pretty high on that one too, from what I remember. So
that sounds promising. So we'll be right here with that next month. Like I said off the top, the All American Spook Show podcast comes out every Monday at 6 p.m. Stick around here on the YouTube channel to go watch Video Vortex, Hammer Horror in Order, lots of other stuff that we have here. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next month.